everyone. I am Owino. I'm here on a different podcast. But in general, welcome to Attic Chapter. This is a first timer for us. So you all are our day ones. Thank you for being here. And yeah, we are going to have a beautiful conversation with Gilbert here. I've been avoiding to say your second name because I'm not sure whether I'll pronounce it right. Yeah, but we are going to delve into you as a person and with your business also as a founder. Yeah, so I hope you all are excited. Yeah, and we can start. If you have maoni fupi, you can sprinkle.
Yes. As you recall, I was here a few weeks ago, and I can't stop talking about Attic. You can ask my colleagues. I think it's a fantastic community. You all have the best vibe. You are everything I think Africans should aspire to be, which is you operate out of a place of love, mutual support, ambition. It's just amazing. I wish when I was starting out I had an Attic.
Such a community.
So in terms of who I am, Gilbert Manirakiza.
Yes. Manirakiza.
So Manirakiza means God saves.
Oh, okay.
It's a name that my parents gave me because at the time of my birth, I think I was like, I don't know how many weeks preterm. Mm-hmm. So it was a tiny thing.
Yeah.
I wasn't really supposed to make it, but God saved.
Okay.
God saved me, so that's how they decided that that's the best name to give me.
Yeah.
So if you call me,
you have the word God in your name.
Yes.
Which one, Manira? Or?
So Mana is God.
Okay.
And then Irakiza is he saves.
Okay.
So,
okay.
So if you put it together.
Yeah. Hallelujah.
Amen.
Yeah.
So the word comes from the Kirundi language. That's my country of birth. But Kenya is my country of love and adoption. And choice.
Okay. Yeah.
I've been in Kenya for much longer than I've been in my own country.
Yeah.
Of Burundi. So. Every day is an amazing day.
Yeah.
In fact, I usually say to most of my friends that this nation is a very blessed nation. But unfortunately, I usually hear people saying, "Really?" I get side-eyed a lot when I say that. But I truly mean it. I think all African countries are special and blessed and destined for great things.
Yeah.
It's all a matter of perspective.
Okay.
And Kenya is among
the chosen generation.
Absolutely.
I'd like to know how you came into being an entrepreneur now. Mm-hmm. Your founding story. I remember last time you said that you've done, 10 or 15 businesses.
Yes, I have.
And this guy has always been trying. So, what was your entry into business and maybe also how Newmark came about?
Yes.
So, your founding story. Yeah.
Interestingly, my founder story is slightly different from many of the stories because I think many stories tend to have a very clear start. I think for me, from the time I was in high school, I somehow gravitated towards entrepreneurship.
Yeah. You went to a Kenyan high school?
No, it was an international high school for refugees.
Okay.
Yes, because that's what I was.
Yeah.
And so the school was funded by international organizations, but the school itself did not have a canteen where students could eat. So I was part of an association which is very much similar to Attic, except it's not so entrepreneurial focused. That one was more of like a self-help group. And one day I was like, hey guys, why don't we start a small canteen in the school?
Okay.
And that's what we did. And it started doing very well. And a few terms in, it started paying school fees for members who couldn't afford school fees.
Yeah.
So that was my first contact with the power of entrepreneurship, what people call entrepreneurship. At the time, for me, it was just you identify a product that people need, and you bring up some capital. Initially, we started with very little capital because it was contributions from members.
Yeah.
we would buy sodas and crisps and mandazis and things like that, bring them. And as the capital grew, because we reinvested the profit, it became a fairly robust and vibrant business.
Yeah.
So when I was finishing high school, and I was asking myself what I wanted to do, I couldn't come up with anything. I was if I may say so, I was a top student. I was first in my class throughout.
Bragging in a very subtle way.
Maybe it will make sense when I talk about equipping, godly equipping and things like that. But
maybe just to interrupt, have you met people who have gone to Alliance?
No.
They're never humble about it.
They're never humble. Oh.
Anyway,
I think there's an Alliance person.
You have to know. Once they enter a room, you have to know they went there.
Yes. So in that sense, I knew I could practically follow any career.
Yeah.
But none of those things was clicking in my spirit, because I was a doctor, architect. I was gravitated towards architect for a little bit.
Yeah.
But then one time I sort of woke up and I was like, wait a minute. One of the things that I have done that shows an area of gifting, or that shows an area of result, because results never lie in life.
Yeah.
If you follow results, you'll tend to find the right place of appointment. So for me, I found that this particular business and also running that association were the two things that were doing absolutely great during the time I was leading them.
Yeah.
So I decided that maybe business would be my best option. So I started reading books. I started reading books on entrepreneurship. I came across Rich Dad Poor Dad. I came across, and when I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, I instantly made my decision.
Okay.
So it was a question of how. And incidentally, there are a bunch of other books that I read that completely shifted my perspective on 1, money, 2, success, 3, building things like businesses. So I think the other book that was very pivotal was Cash Flow Quadrant by the same author as Rich Dad Poor Dad, because it gave me a blueprint for financial investment across my life. So actually it's at that point that I made a decision on my investment journey, money management and things like that.
And this is information you're taking in right after high school?
Absolutely. No, in fact, at high school. I hadn't finished. I was still in my last year of high school.
You were steps ahead.
Exactly. But I think it's so important to start early.
Yeah.
It's so critical to start early, because when you are going to go into entrepreneurship, if you don't have lots of money, then you either have lots of skill in a given area, or you have lots of time to fail and learn. So those 3 factors, if you don't manage them well as an entrepreneur, you can actually find yourself running out of what we call runway as an entrepreneur. So manage your time well, manage your knowledge well and skill levels well, and also make sure you manage money. The interesting thing is that money will follow the first 2. Money will follow time and knowledge and skill. Yeah. So if you use your time to hone your skill, money will be easier for you to bring into your ecosystem. Yeah. So the third book that ended up adding to these 2 is a book called The Art of the Deal by Donald J. Trump. I know many people, every time I say that, people are like, you were inspired by that guy. Yes, that book is extremely interesting from a negotiation point of view. Okay. So from there, everything that I did, I have to admit that was fairly intentional, because I started learning about how to invest, and I decided to pursue accounting, not for the sake of being an accountant, but so that I could understand investment and things like that. Yeah. I later dropped out of the program. I didn't finish it to the end, but it had given me enough foundation. Yeah. And I remember from that time I started investing at the Nairobi Stock Exchange. my parents had given me a small allowance, and it was around $100.
Yeah.
And I invested it, and I think within 2 months, I had like 10x'd it, just by investing at the Nairobi Stock Exchange.
Yeah.
Because I had learned how you learn about a stock, I learn information about a stock before the market knows that information.
Yeah.
So you buy early, and then, so I'll give you an example. East African Cables was said to have signed a deal with a French company. East African Cables was listed. So the moment I saw that newspaper article, I went and bought all the shares I could.
Bit louder, yeah.
Yes. So the moment I saw that that newspaper article, I went ahead and bought all the shares for East African Cables. And lo and behold, 2 weeks later, that particular stock increased threefold in value. Because now the market, especially the investors, realized, oh, there's this big deal, so the value of this particular company is about to go up.
Yeah.
And so you realize that this was immediately after high school. So I guess the moral of the story there is, once you have information about what you should do, just execute.
Yeah.
I think I hear many people saying, I want to, thinking of, but execution tends to be either hesitant or it takes too long.
Yeah.
For me at that time, I learned that valuable lesson. Just do.
Yeah.
It's never
I
that
think
serious.
Also, one thing I've also learned, just tying into that, is that motivation expires really quickly. So what I feel like doing today is going to be very different from what I feel like doing tomorrow. So I think at times people are just in a round of feeling to do things. And if you don't do it, then it just doesn't stick. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah. So how did Newmark come about? Because we've left you at school.
Yeah.
Did you ever go back to school?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I did. So
Thank God.
But something interesting happened in between.
Yeah.
When I was a child, I used to love reading books. I used to love words. I used to be in theater. I used to be in all things literary and language. So one day, a friend of mine tells me that there is a college looking for a lecturer, particularly a French lecturer. And since I had time, and this was around the time I was in the university, because I left university very close to graduating.
Yeah. Did you do your uni here?
Yes, I did my uni here.
Okay.
At Strathmore.
Okay.
Strathmore.
Okay. Are they here?
I don't see. As we are too cool for school. So anyway, I, when I was approached, I said, yeah, sure. Let me give it a try.
Yeah.
I needed the money. I needed to make extra income to supplement my school fees. Actually, at that point, I was paying for myself everything. I was taking care of myself through the investments and the things that I was doing. So I started teaching. To cut a long story short, it does very well. And the college I joined, I only had 2 students. 6 months later, we had 25.
Yeah.
A year later, we had to open a second campus for that French faculty. I worked like a dog. I worked in the morning, at night, because I was paid on commission.
By this time, you're already out of school.
By this time around, but this time I'm about to leave school. And I actually left school because of the work. There was so much work that I had to do.
Yeah.
And the money was too sweet. So I said I can always come back to school.
Yeah.
But then what happened is I quit school, went and started teaching full-time. I did a lot of lecturing, including even some classes at Nairobi University, and I did corporate classes in several institutions and companies. And what transpired out of it is that, because of the gifting that I have with languages, many people would just see the results. So I would go and teach a group and within 3 months they are talking.
Yeah.
And so it was just an area of gifting, and that's how I entered into the language services industry, because there is translation, interpretation as another area of service.
Yeah, I think you are a threat to Duolingo.
So even though I did go back to school to finish, I decided that this language services profession was very compelling for me, because there was a lot of grace. I did it extremely well. So I was recruited by different institutions, international organizations such as the United Nations, the African Union, World Bank, etc., to provide
Dragging
them.
subtly.
You know, I honestly give glory to God.
Yeah.
And I say this without a religiousness that many people tend to use. If you've heard my story, there is nothing that I've done that qualifies me to work with all these big entities, isn't it? But you know, I managed to do all those things. So I give God the glory, because if it was by my schooling or by my connection, I would probably have a different, story. But since it's him, I actually have to say, I give God the glory for all these things.
Yeah.
So, lecturer, language services professional for different organizations. At some point, I realized there is a fundamental problem, because as an interpreter and as a language professional, you interact a lot with big conferences.
Okay.
And I started getting annoyed. I'm sure all of you, when you're young, you get annoyed very easily by different things. One of the things that annoyed me is that you would go to conferences and they're talking exactly about the same thing. Do you know that there is a conference talking about you guys today? Saying, the youth of Africa, they need to be, they need jobs. Okay, that conference costs $1 million to organize.
Yeah.
$1 million can create how many jobs in your view? Very many, isn't it?
Yeah.
So over time, I realized that the international system has a way of talking about Africa's development, but not really doing. And over time, I became very frustrated.
Yeah.
I was living a very privileged life. I was earning a lot of money, if I may say so myself.
Dragging subtly.
But that's when I realized that I could use those resources to actually do something about what I was hearing. So that's how I ended up creating the Newmark. At the time, it was the Newmark Events and Travel Consultants.
Which year is this?
This is 2010.
2010.
So 14 years ago today.
Yeah.
So the solution that I was thinking about in my mind was to help these international organizations to organize much more meaningful convenings. Okay. That's why events was a big part of what we did. Yeah. And the logistical part of events was also, most of the times, horribly done. The protocol and things like that. So really, that was the DNA. So we started working with a number of international organizations that I already knew. But they weren't interested at all. They weren't interested because what they had was working. That's what you will face in many of your businesses. It's not all the time that what you have to offer gets an instant positive response from those you think will actually appreciate it. So when we didn't get the immediate response, we sort of had to tweak it a little bit. And I remember I told my team, well, we're not getting the big conference contracts we wanted to get. But if we become very good at the small things that are involved in an event, such as graphic design, protocol, logistics, we can sell those services on their own. And that strategy worked initially, because we started doing a bit more of graphic design work, creative design, event branding, logistics. But this was a very small part of our revenue. So a year later, I was ready to quit. Actually, I think I was ready to quit even earlier than that, but I admitted it to myself only a year later, because it was costly. I mean, I had taken on about 6 full-time team members. But I was like, the voice inside me was like, just relax, just keep doing what you're doing. So we pushed another year. And when I say we, it's me. My sister joined me as a co-founder about 1 year.
Yeah.
I think she's one of the reasons why I stuck with the idea. But after another year of terrible losses, because now all my income is going into the business, and the team had to grow a little bit, maybe by 2 people, because we needed to become good at a range of things to see if the market would respond. And by the end of 2012, by mid 2012, I was done. I was, you know what, this is too much.
Yeah.
Do you know that it's at that point that a client we had spoken to 2 years ago came and said, "Are you guys still in business?" And gave us the biggest contract we've ever had to date. So it was, I'll put it into context, it was a single contract for $500,000. $500,000 is, I don't know what it is in current. It's
a lot of money. How much? Okay. Yeah.
So anyway, so at the point of giving up, that's when I got
God saves.
Absolutely. So as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah.
We've been growing ever since. We've been consolidating the team.
Yeah.
2013, we signed a very big contract with a global PR firm and became the exclusive representative of all their clients here in Africa. And we started expanding to other countries shortly after that. And every day is exciting. And then I want to acknowledge also my other teams. There's Newmark, there's Weza Prosoft. It's a technology company.
Yeah.
I was very happy to hear that we have some techies in the room. I think I don't see the ones I had seen last time. Yes, so there's Weza, which is a technology company, and a few other businesses that have spun out of what we do at Newmark.
Yeah, something that has come in my mind while you were speaking is that there's a point where you are the one paying your business for the first 2-3 years, and you talked about having 6 team members, and recently we've had a debate in our WhatsApp group on how do you pay people, or how much do you know how to pay them, and what determines. So at this point, what are you telling your 6 team members, and are they getting compensated for the heavy work that they are doing?
That conversation involves a number of things.
Okay.
Because there are different perspectives in that kind of discussion. The discussion has a perspective of the employer and the perspective of the employee.
Yeah.
Because of the different and almost opposing nature of those two perspectives, you must have what we call a very strong culture. And that culture has to determine the relationship that should exist between the person who is employed and the person who's employing. Yeah. First of all, let me make it very clear that as a founder or as an entrepreneur, many people tend to say, "I am my own boss." Is there anyone who says you are your own boss? Are you your own boss? Let me just dispel that.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as being your own boss. Because being a leader and being a manager, being in charge of people, automatically means that you have to cater to their needs.
Yeah.
And that's what basically an employee is. When you work to satisfy the needs of someone else, that's the classic definition of
an employee.
There are many words, but let's call it an employee for now. So it means that even a founder, entrepreneur, is essentially an employee. They just have a different perspective, and they see more than other employees. So, for example, an employer has to think about the future, has to think about cash flow, has to think about the survival of the business. An employee doesn't have to think about that. So the only way to reconcile all these different perspectives is to actually clearly define the culture, what I call the culture. The culture is how people are supposed to interact.
Okay.
So, for instance, you have to define the relationship between employee and company. So I discovered that in the US, and this is something that ended up helping us significantly. In the US, you would have Amazon going from, say, 500,000 people in 2018 to 1-point-something million people in 2023. And I'm sure many of us might be struggling even to handle the 2 people you have, or the 3 or the 4. That's because at Amazon, they create culture. So when you come in, they tell you, this is the relationship that exists between you and the company. That's the first relationship. So for us at Newmark, it's what we call the alliance. It's mutual investment for mutual benefit. We build each other for a mutual collective benefit. Second thing, teamwork. You have to define how people work among themselves. Third thing, you have to actually define the leadership style. How do people lead? How do people mentor? How do people coach? Because those relationships ultimately determine the output. So the remuneration is part of that conversation. So if it happens in isolation, it's going to be a challenge. Because the founder will hire other leaders at some point, like is the case at Newmark. And these other leaders end up doing the leading themselves. So if you don't give them a blueprint, then you might find that there are 4 different styles of leadership. And you see, since these other leaders are also determining recruitment decisions, and they're determining who gets promoted and things like that, if there is no blueprint, then ultimately you'll have a lot of chaos. So if you are going to look for employment in a company, always ask, what is the culture in this company? How do people relate to each other? How do leaders approach leadership? You see that point where people ask you to ask a question? Always ask that. That is the single most important question you can ask a potential employer, because it will tell you, if they haven't defined a leadership culture, if they haven't defined a culture at all, chances are you will have some challenges here and there. Not always major challenges. Some companies don't define these things. Now, if you're an employer or an entrepreneur or a founder, I recommend to you, start early. There are a couple of books I will recommend to you. There is a book called Powerful by the former head of HR at Netflix. There is a book from Reed Hastings, of the founder of LinkedIn, talking about the culture they had at LinkedIn. There is also The $1 Trillion Coach. The $1 Trillion Coach is a book about the top coach who coached, Steve Jobs and all these other top $1 trillion CEOs. Those 3 books will give you a strong understanding on culture, leadership, mentorship, and all the things that you need to understand. So remuneration has to fall into that. And remuneration depends on a number of things, such as market rates and all that. But that's a tactical thing. That one, your HR can sort it out very easily. But the culture, that one, is the most complicated thing. Because no matter how much someone is paid, if the culture is wrong, they will still feel dissatisfied.
Anyway, that has been our time and our dates. For all those who walked in, I hope you've been able to learn something, whether you've listened to the whole of it or half of it. This is Attic Chapter. We are a youth-led business community. And today we were having a very special session. Besides it being a date between me and Gilbert, it was also a podcast recording. And I hope you enjoyed. And at least now, people who are not able to catch up with us today will be able to see us at some point on their screen.